hello. How are folks doing today? I had a plan for this live stream to talk about the US debt, which we can still talk a little bit about, but I didn't really prepare for this live stream, and I have 2 donuts, so I feel like we probably have plenty to cover today. Are people here? Do people exist in this chat? Can we do the map thing today, or is it not running? Oh, we can do the map thing today. So if you are, I can't actually, oh yeah, that's the other thing is people don't realize that I can't see the counter. Like you can see the counter of how many people are live and I can't see it. So when I ask if people are here, I'm not joking. I have no idea. Yeah, if you put your city or your country or your state into the chat, then it will pop up on the screen. It's always very exciting. Yeah, I gave a presentation this morning and it was for a conference on Eastern Standard Time. And because of that, I kind of had this weird gap in my day where I presented for like 2 hours in the morning and then kind of didn't know what to do with myself until the live stream, since in many ways this is very similar than giving a talk. Ooh, look at that! We have both coasts here. Welcome. No one in the rest of the world is awake right now, or at the very least they're not awake to watch me eat donuts, which is fair. It's not always the first thing I want to do in the morning is watch someone else eat donuts. Yeah, let me tell you what the donuts are for today. So, the donuts are pretty exciting, and yes, I got 2 again, and I got 2 again because once again, all their seasonal donuts are only around for October instead of for a couple months. And because of that, if I'm going to try all the seasonal flavors, I have to try them every time. So this is is that off the screen? It is. Okay. I can't see chat. So the first donut is a Huckleberry Fritter donut. I guess it's really just a fritter, which is a donut with fruit in it. And if you don't know about huckleberries, which you might not, I grew up thinking that huckleberries was just like Huckleberry Finn and was not an actual berry. However, here in the land of berries in Oregon, we have all kinds of berries, and one of them is huckleberries, which is one of my favorite berries, I would say. There are a lot of berries that we have in Oregon that are just not distributed because berries are like impossible to pack. They're annoying to pick, and they are very fragile and delicate. And because of that, when you come here, you just can hang out next to all of our waterways and discover lots and lots of different berries, including the fact that blackberries are an invasive species here. And then the other one is very seasonal. It is an apple cider donut, and it's very oblong. I don't know why. Yeah, and it smells like cinnamon sugar and apple cider, and I'm very excited and pretty much think that we should just have a mukbang and I shouldn't talk about anything. We should just eat donuts the whole time. I had to wait in line for half an hour for these donuts, so you all better be excited about them. I'm excited about them, but Brianna said, I remember having a donut in Portland with Marion berry, which I otherwise would have assumed was a fake berry. Yeah, that's it sounds like there are so many berries here that I no longer think that people are making up the name of a berry. I just assume it's a berry I had not previously encountered, like salmon berries, huckleberries, Marion berries. Aaron, can you think of any other berries? I don't know. And the one that grew up in Oregon can't remember any more berries, but there are more berries. Mary berries. Mary berries are in fact native to the UK. So yeah, and I also have a tea that I am trying out. This is the big exciting thing that happened this week in Oh My Dollar Land, in my personal opinion, was that I launched the tea line that I had been hinting at for a bunch of time, which I have some lovely product placement back here. Although I think there's only 6 left before I completely run out of this run. We sold out of the other flavor in the first hour, but it is a whiskey tea, flavored like bourbon, non-alcoholic. It is caffeinated. The other tea, Perna Colada, is not caffeinated. But I am trying out this tea today, which is from my supplier, and it is a pumpkin spice tea. And I thought it would be, I'm just trying it out because had a lot of success with the launch. I did only order a really small batch, less than 100 teas, or less than 100 bags of tea, essentially portions of tea, because I just wanted to see if people were going to be willing to tolerate someone known for their cat finance releasing an alcohol-themed tea line. But sold out very quickly of the first flavor. So, in the future. Dean says, I have to wait because of budget, but one day I will try the bourbon one. So I found out today that there are a couple other tea companies that make bourbon tea, including one in the UK, which I didn't actually know it was a thing before I found this. So apparently it is a genre of tea. Of course, it was my half British, half UK friend who's dating an Irish person that told me that, and that feels appropriate. I'm going to get some next run, but Budgetober prevented me this run. I appreciate that everybody is, encouraging me to do another run. I am really hoping to have a non-caffeinated bourbon-esque tea. I have one that I am trying right now, but I cold pressed it because that's how I kind of prefer to have the bourbon, I like it to resemble bourbon more than to be a hot tea. So I have that one cold pressing right now, and I am going to try it. And it is non-caffeinated, and I'm kind of hoping that it replaces the bourbon well. And then I will have a non-caffeine option, because that was a lot of people's problems. They can't handle caffeine, or they just don't want caffeine at the time of the day when they also want something that tastes like bourbon, which is very valid. Yeah. So that was the exciting things that happened in Oh My Dollar Land this week. And now we have donuts to try. That's pretty much it. In financial news this week, Forbes said that Trump is actually twice as in debt as the New York Times story said. They said he's close to $1 billion in debt, and they did a massive dig through of Trump's taxes that they actually just released this. They actually just released this in an hour ago, half an hour ago. So very new. Yeah. So Trump is $1 billion in debt. Emily said, where did more debt come from? How is there more? Well, so Forbes did a very in-depth study trying to dig it all up. And it looks like there's a couple reasons. So to figure out how much he is in debt, they actually have to dig through the financial statements of all the different corporations that he has to try to figure out what they owe on different properties. And there's a limit to what kind of financial statements he has to put out, because so many of them are private businesses that don't have the same of disclosures that they would otherwise. So one of the big issues with trying to dig up all of this debt is that they have struggled to figure out, even with this debt, who he owes it to. So it looks like the largest chunk is his 1297 Avenue of Americas, otherwise known as Trump Tower. And that one is... Wait, no, is that Chicago? Avenue of Americas? Does anybody know? Anyway, it seems like that's the largest chunk. He owns 30% of the stake in that building, and it's $337 million. There were 2 loans that they weren't really able to figure that out. That is a lot of money. I assume that is where crimes happen. Yes. It's so I am not a security expert, so I'm not gonna, I can't read. I don't have enough ability to read into this to be able to make a confident assertion that there is illegal activity going on. I will say that quite a few people are saying that only Deutsche Bank was lending to him, and Deutsche Bank, as you may or may not know, got involved in an extremely long, what major international bank hasn't been at this point, but Deutsche Bank had a lot of misdealings, a lot of bad loans, bad corporate loans. It all kind of got tied up a couple years ago, but a bunch of people were saying that Deutsche Bank was the only one that had loaned him money and everything else was private loans. But that's not true. Forbes dig through, they found that the loans were owed, in fact, to at least a couple other banks. Anyway, that's kind of the update on what happened with Trump's taxes this week. The other piece of news that I was going to talk about was that as of this week, officially, the United States deficit is greater than the economy. Lol at that, but that's just not true in a resigned tone. I'm so tired of people having to dig up who he owes money to try to figure out if, like, foreign interests have our president of the richest country in the world on the hook for like $337 million. I'm just so tired that we all have to do this. This is, you know, I think I'm going to veer into the political feelings right now, but I think a lot of the people I know that voted for Trump or thought about voting for Trump in 2016, a lot of them said, I thought having a businessman in the White House would be good because, you know, it's very different than having someone that's a career politician. And quite a lot of them ended up being like, actually, turns out he's not a very good businessman. And but that was the argument that a lot of people made, and I could understand it. This idea of kind of wanting to rise above people that had been completely mired in all these congressional politics for years, and like see how a, you know, huge CEO businessman would run the country. I have much less sympathy for that viewpoint now. I'm not going to say I had a ton for it in 2016, but I think that this, in many ways, is the, like, in many ways, this is the argument against having a really large businessman as the president, because there is no way that he, as a real estate person, can step away from his holdings and his interests, and he certainly can't if he's $1 billion in debt. And the level of risk that it takes, aside from just all of the other nepotism and weird stuff going on with, like, the Trump organization and how many of his family members work for it, and, you know, the fact that the Secret Service has essentially been paying millions of dollars a year in hotel costs to Trump hotels because all of the family members that visit Trump properties on business that have to have Secret Service details with them. But aside from all of that, this makes the argument that having a businessman with this much debt, he cannot be separate when he is dealing with all of these people with which he still actively owes money or has business interest with. So, I don't know. Peanut farmers or GTFO. I will say, his business was destroyed when it was held in a trust. He had to rebuild his entire business once he got out because it, like, went bankrupt while he was in office. But he also held it in a trust, which is a thing he's supposed to do, but that Trump did not do. So you can't really hold something in a trust when it's your family holding it in a trust, and a bunch of them also work for the White House. He did also commit a lot less crimes. That is a very good point. In 1992, I went into Trump Tower, New York City, out of curiosity. Got as far as the third floor. Place was gold-lined and black granite everywhere. Nouveau rich folly incarnate. Yeah, we went in. We actually went to a Mr. Money Mustache, which is like a, you know, a lot of people here know about it, but it is a group of people that are into early retirement and like mostly via the way of frugalism. But we went to a meetup when we were in New York City, and it was in the lobby of Trump Tower because it was a free inside place to meet, because they have like a very large kind of atrium area, and I don't think that's true anymore. This was, I guess, 2016, but it was before Trump was elected, so... incidentally, it was right before I decided to take a job working on the presidential election that year, so fascinating how it didn't convince me to come to his side. Very nice atrium, though, I will say. It was a little less gold-lined in there. It was just more like a nice indoor place that had a view of the sky. Mostly free. It's hard to find free places to chill inside in Manhattan. Very hard. Especially lower Manhattan. Emily said, I think the free public atrium trade-off in Manhattan winds up being a trade-off for zoning considerations. That I have no doubt that that's true. Yeah, I think the process of building this triplex that Aaron has embarked on has been a very interesting process in really seeing how these trade-offs play out, because I always knew about these like building bonuses and zoning trade-offs from the policy side. Like, you know, I went to classes where we talked about them. I sat in city commission meetings where we like discussed if we were going to allow for them. And then to actually see someone try to build a project and try to utilize them is very fascinating. Yeah, I 100% believe this. That's very fascinating. And I support the free public atriums in Manhattan. I like the confidence with which people know this. So the U.S. economy being in more debt than it is worth this year. Should we be freaking out? I already did a more in-depth live stream on the U.S. debt and the deficit, which are two separate things, kind of. The deficit is the budget gap. So it is the gap between how much new debt that we are issuing and the amount that we are spending in government, just to be clear. That is only true at the federal level. State budgets have to balance. They have to be zeroed out. States are not allowed to issue bonds for debt, generally. That being said, that's how states end up going bankrupt. That's why Illinois has been bankrupt over and over again. They seem incapable of balancing their state budget, which is just that their spending does not match the amount that they're taking out in taxes. And one reason that we continue to take out more debt in the U.S. is that the interest rates are very low for us. So I've talked before in a couple other live streams about how U.S. Treasury bonds work, but essentially we print bonds and other people and countries buy them, and you yourself may buy them as part of your investment portfolio. We buy them because we like the stable investment, because the U.S. always pays back its debt. However, one thing that happens is that Congress will fight about raising the debt ceiling, which is the limit on how much debt they're allowed to issue, shut down the government, done that a few times the past couple years. And when they argue about whether or not they're going to raise the debt ceiling, then our credit rating with the world can drop a little bit because other people start worrying that maybe the U.S. will someday not pay back its debt on time. So it's, so essentially that is 100% like why you should be both worried and not worried. Reasons you should not be worried is that the interest rate is still not rising on U.S. debt. Other countries in the world as well, essentially the International Monetary Fund, which is kind of like the bank for countries. The International Monetary Fund begged their countries, to which they work with countries that are not able to issue debt, and be attractive because those countries live in poverty. They don't have a very strong currency, various things. And they begged countries. The IMF said, please keep issuing bonds. We will keep buying them from you. And the reason we will keep buying them from you is because even more people are going to be forced into extreme worldwide poverty. And I know in the United States, we are experiencing a lot of people in American poverty. The poverty levels that the IMF are worried about around the world are people that are living on less than $1.70 a day. And $1.70 a day is the world poverty level, which is very different than the American poverty level, which the American poverty level would be, it's $17,000 a year, which adds up to a lot more than $1.70 a day, but I'm not doing the math right now. But it's like a scale of times 10. And, we have social safety nets in the United States, and we have gigantic holes in them, but we have large social safety nets that do not exist in the kind of countries that the IMF is lending to. And even the IMF, who lends to countries who quite often default on their debt, who quite often don't pay back their bonds, has essentially said, please keep spending, because we are very worried about the human effects of this pandemic on countries that have a high number of people that are living in poverty, and how many more people it is going to send into poverty. So the EU, which has less people living in worldwide poverty, there's very few people in EU countries that live in the worldwide definition of poverty. Most of them live in the global south. That isn't to be said that that's universally true. But the EU has also said, we have to reach a deal, and we have to spend. And so the United States, which historically pays one of the lowest interest rates and has the most secure currency in the world, and trades at one of the best rates, and has more of their bonds and their currency held by foreign countries, we should not be worrying too much about it. Dean says, China has been buying U.S. bonds debts for decades. I read once, not sure if it's true. China is the second largest buyer of U.S. debts. The first is Japan. I've talked about this on previous live streams. The reason that China buys so much of our debt is because they require high cash reserves. And the reason they require high cash reserves is they try to keep their currency low so that vis-a-vis other currencies to U.S. consumers or other consumers that pay them in U.S. dollars, which is common for a lot of countries, that they have enough to make sure that their goods are cheap, relatively favorable to the US dollar. So they need to be able to back up US dollars. So when I buy something from China, which happens, let's say, this iPhone. When I buy something from China, so I bought this from a US company. However, the US company manufactures it in China. That US company pays its Chinese suppliers in US dollars. However, they get these influx of US dollars, but they have to pay their local workers, and they have to pay all of the suppliers and their rent and everything in Chinese yuan. And what they do with that yuan is they go to the Chinese central bank and they exchange it for US dollars. One of the reasons that there is so much U.S. Treasury bonds and so much U.S. currency held by the Chinese government is that they have a exchange rate that they try to peg to. It's a slightly floating exchange rate where they need to have enough cash to be able to trade that back at the exchange rate that they prefer in order to keep Chinese goods desirable on the market. Japan does a similar thing. However, Japan has a fixed exchange rate. Both countries also have extremely, extremely high savings rates. And so a lot of the Chinese people that own U.S. bonds are actually just average, everyday people that then buy U.S. Treasury bonds because they are considered very secure. The Chinese Treasury bonds do not trade in the same way that U.S. Treasury bonds do. There's quite a few countries in the world where regular people cannot buy bonds for their currency. Emily said, is Japan's fixed exchange rate just because they decided that's what they're doing? It's more complicated than that. It has to do with the 90s. You may not know this, but there was a huge economic crisis in Japan in the 90s, and then they've been in, essentially for the past 20 years, in economic stagnation. And one of the reasons that they're economic stagnation, one of the reasons that they've chosen to do this fixed exchange rate, it's not quite fixed, it's pegged. There's a little different than fixed. Fixed is if you say always, it is you get 2 of this currency for 1 of that currency. Pegged, there can be, you can say roughly we want to make it against this currency, and then you can have a floating peg. There's all sorts of different ways that you can do it. They, I believe, have what is called a floating peg. But one of the big reasons they did it was the same reason China did. Japan, just like China, is an export economy. And because they are an export economy, they want to keep their goods cheap to foreigners vis-a-vis foreign currencies. So that is one of the big reasons, and they pegged to the US dollar. Other reasons have to do with the way that they save. So because the average Chinese citizen saves 30%, that is their national savings rate in China, they save mostly in cash, but they often will get bonds. And because of that, they often acquire those bonds, and it will often be US Treasury bonds. So, sorry I didn't answer too much in depth into Japan, but it's kind of like I just got a pop quiz on an exam, and I definitely have in-depth studied the exchange rate for Japan at some point, but I cannot remember the specific details about their exchange rate, and I was pulling from my international macroeconomics class in my head. I was like a research assistant for a professor doing research for the IMF one summer, and all I was doing all day was looking at tables of exchange rates over like historical data, and I feel like I absorbed none of it. I wish I could give you like the exact reason and the exact type of peg that they have, but I can't remember. I believe they have a floating peg. So that me going through all of the different countries that say that we should keep spending, should be worried about the US. My answer is not this year. And generally, yes, we should be concerned about the US debt. It is rising. Trump vowed that he was going to get rid of it. I just want to note that under Clinton, we actually had a balanced budget and we had no deficit year over year. Trump came in with 14 trillion, I believe, in US debt, and it's now at 21 trillion. And that was before COVID-19. It has been steadily rising. So, it is a thing to be worried about. What I will say is I actually think that one, we need to do it to prevent human suffering. We need to be spending right now, and we need to worry about those consequences later. And that is like the least personal finance thing I've ever said. But what powers the U.S. economy is people, and that's just generally true. And what powers the U.S. economy is services. And that, like, we are a service-based economy. That is what we export. That is a hugest portion of our economy, and industry. And guess what? If people are dying, or if people are in extreme economic straits, it has a huge effect on our economy, because we have a consumer-based economy, we have a service-based economy, and all of the things that we need to come out of this, if we are not spending, if the government isn't spending, we are screwed. And so, yes, we should be worried about it later after the rest of all the things, is what I would say. And I also think it's important to be aware of, because it does come up like often in like US politics. We talk about it a lot. There's a lot of misconceptions around it. Like this idea that like we owe all this money to China and China is going to come knocking for it is not, it's not the same. That's not how like treasury bonds work. And it's not like China can just call us up. Like they get something out of it just the same as we get something out of it. It's not the same relationship that, for example, Trump has with like an individual oligarch lending him $200 million or whatever. So I think that, like, it's important to talk about. And I would also say that it's important to be aware of, but recognize that one, government spending is different than personal spending, and it just is. Putting the government on a budget, like, and like eliminating debt it just doesn't work the same. And then the other thing to think about is how unprecedented this year, as tired as it is to say in these unprecedented times, like, this year is what we have been preparing for. and we have all of the things. It's sort of like if every panic thing had happened at the same time to you personally, and you had a perfect credit score and the ability to borrow at less than 1% interest, and people would die if you couldn't. Guess what you would do? You would spend money on that credit if you knew that you were going to be able to pay it back eventually. So, yeah. You're not spending 99% of your income. Actually, one of the very interesting things that I saw it on Marketplace, was that over 50% of Americans are actually saving or aggressively paying off debt right now. And that is very interesting, like, from the perspective of someone who also has been saving a lot of money. I don't have debt to pay off, but I have been saving. I saved over $20,000 this year, which I haven't done in a couple years. And that was like a goal that I had set out before the pandemic, but a lot of people were kind of struggling with the same kind of thing that I was a lot of the people that they talked about is like the people that are saving are educated, white, and they work, white collar jobs. The people that are not saving are the people that have been most affected by this pandemic, retail and service workers. So it is very fascinating to see. I will note that the US is not known for our great savings rate. There's only like one or two countries that have worse savings rates than us, as far as personal savings rates. I think our average before the pandemic was 3.4%, is how much people save. And we are up to quite a bit more. And I just want to do a shout out to the 20 and 2020 challenges on the forums, because a lot of people have met their goals for that, which were different, like, savings or debt pay down challenges that we have. So but similarly, a lot of us have the same struggle where they're like, it feels perverse to be doing better in this pandemic as far as saving. And for a lot of people, it's just because so many expenses have dropped down for them. Like, maybe they did, spend a lot at restaurants or travel before. But additionally, like, a lot of people don't have childcare costs right now, which a lot of people are not happy about and would really like to have some childcare right now. And a lot of people don't have commute costs right now. And for a lot of people, that added up a significant portion of their budget. But similarly, this question of, like, should you be just actually, saving is great, but maybe you should be spending more on takeout, or making sure that restaurants and, like, small businesses that you really want to make sure survive through this are still there. So yeah, quite a lot of people said that they, like, had switched to getting takeout like once a month to now getting it like once a week and stuff like that. Oh, I just saw that Aaron said I like that I can justify getting takeout now. Yeah, I will say that, like, it's important to understand that on a personal level, we're not going to bail out whole industries, right? I think it is important. It is important to recognize, and if you have the ability to find the thing that you really care about and want to make sure is still there post-pandemic and find a way to support them, if that is within your, like, means. But you also shouldn't feel bad about prioritizing hitting financial goals. And also, if you're just stockpiling cash because you're scared, that's pretty valid. It is definitely taking longer to get rehired right now, regardless of whether or not you are in the privileged position of having the kind of job that is still doing decently well. So, yeah. Nana says, I'm genuinely worried because expenses are going up. Grocery prices are going up. Restaurant prices are worse now. Everything is $2 up. Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of supply chain issues with food, and so food prices have gone up. My grocery expenses personally, I noticed really rose in March and April for me. They went up by like almost 10%. And that was because a lot of my cheaper staples were out. And that was because a lot of people are doing panic buying. I haven't been very affected by the supply chain issues personally. My grocery prices have essentially gotten the same. But I know a lot of people that are really scared about it. And also people in the UK are very terrified right now because it's very much looking like they're heading towards a no-deal Brexit in January. And if they do have a no-deal Brexit in January, they will, you know, they're going to have a huge issue with the price of goods because they import so much of their stuff from the EU right now. So I've been bulk buying since 2007 if low prices. Yeah, that was the big thing is that like all of the stuff that I get as a frugal person was gone because everybody was just panic buying. And I have really had to stretch my comfort levels around how much I store in the house because we don't live in a very big place. And so we didn't have a lot of storage space, but we've just kind of like repurposed under our couch to now be a pantry, which I feel like, you know, it's good. I also live in an earthquake zone. So Emily said that groceries are so much more expensive. Is that really true for you in LA? Have you noticed any particular goods? I've been watching the consumer price index and it has wildly flung around for things like dairy and meat supply chains. And I know beef has gone up quite a lot as well, but the chicken supply chains seem to be quite normalized. So I'm commuting almost 2 hours a day for work and very thankful for current gas prices, at least. That's awesome. I mean, I'm very sorry that you have to commute 2 hours a day for work. But I am thankful that you're saving some money. Are you stockpiling gas, Brianna? I'm very interested to know about this. Beef is expensive enough that the taco places are noting it on their menus. Oh, yeah. I did notice that had happened in like a couple places. So, yeah, I don't know, it's fascinating. Okay, we had a donut mention, and I feel like before we get into more economic news, under the couch seems like a perfectly reasonable place to store canned food until you say it out loud. It's fine. It's a reasonable place. We don't have anywhere else. All right, this is the first one. This is the Huckleberry Fritter. Look at that. Gorgeous. I mean, it's just so gorgeous. All right, let's go for it. Okay. It tastes like a fritter. It is... I'm not really getting that much huckleberry. It tastes like delicious sugar, but I'm not getting the berry out of it yet. Tastes like the thing it is. Sounds like a good starting point, yeah. I think there's like fruit in the inside. Oh yeah, look at that. That's a good piece right there. I like how much easier it is to like tear off the pieces of the fritters than a regular donut. Oh, wait. It's very fluffy in this part. The edges are like fried and so they're hard. But the inside is like excellent fluff. A donut tax is being taken. Yes, this is delicious. I love apple fritter donuts if natural and no high fructose corn syrup, palm oil. This is a vegan place, so it definitely doesn't have palm oil in it because most vegans don't do palm oil because of the deforestation effects. But I'm assuming no high fructose corn syrup. But they are delicious. They are still fried, sugary foods, so who knows? Yep, I support this. This is delicious. If we're going to talk about spending your money on things you still want to exist, I still want a vegan donut shop to exist in my neighborhood. But I'm not very worried about them because I had to wait in half an hour for my donut this morning. That's how long the line was. Yep, this is delicious. Okay. I want to make sure I have room for the other donut. So I don't want to get... Should I just go for the other donut? It's already pretty late. I think we can just dive in. I don't have to pretend that I'm here for any more financial content. We can just go for this donut. All right. This is the apple cider one. It is sugary AF. I think it has like... Yeah, it's cinnamon sugar on the outside. It appears to be very fried. And delicious. Oh, this is so good. How do I eat so many donuts and still stay healthy? I mean, your size has nothing to do with your health, but I don't know, you can't really tell if someone is healthy by looking at them, but I just do donuts on live stream days. Okay, so I'm not as in love with the inside of this one. It's like, it's more kind of like a regular bread. It's definitely less sweet, which is kind of like, yeah, it's less sweet today, I would say. It's like, the outside is so sweet. I think they're trying to compensate with maybe like, it's maybe like a little more, I would say like, kind of bready on the inside. Like, you know, like real rustic bread, not like crappy American grocery store bread. It's very doughy, I would say. Like, it feels like you could probably form this into a ball. Denise says, I almost said that donut smells so good. That's how active my brain got when you described it. It is so freaking delicious. It is so good. Emily says, I assume with the running in a mask thing at this point, your lungs are strong AF. I hope so. I'm like really hoping that running in the mask is more cardio conditioning. I'm so ready to like go back to the skating rink and then see how it stands up in my preferred cardio environment. We'll see. Once I kind of like recovered from the 10 days of smoke, because it took a couple days to really like of my exercise for my breathing to not feel labored, just because it was such a bad effect. But I will say, like, after a couple days, I really haven't had any issues where the thing that sucks about a run is my lungs. Like, it's rarely my lungs. That being said, like, there's plenty of other, I mean, the joints part of me is just falling apart, but no amount of running is going to make my joints better. Things I've learned. This is good, but I want there to be more flavor in the dough. Like, I actually really like the texture juxtaposition, but I kind of wish they had put like cinnamon or something inside of the inside, because the contrast is really stark of the like doughy inside with all the cinnamon sugar on the outside. What do you think? Do you think I should put some cinnamon sugar on the Huckleberry fritter? Sounding like a true British Bake Off judge. Oh my god. What was that tweet that I saw the other day that was like, I love the British Bake Off show. A show where they tell them to bake brownies and then yell at them for them being too sweet. You have been jogging 20 to 40 miles? That is so many miles. That's a lot of miles. My upper limit is I won't do more than 15. And I decided that the day I started running, where I was like, I will never run more than 15 miles, because I knew it was not good for my joints, and I also was concerned with my personality type and my friend group that I'd start like getting into ultra marathoning or something, and that was like not what I was going for. Although I'm already starting to wonder with myself about whether or not, because I am running so much, because it's the only thing I can do socially distanced really to work out right now, maybe I should train for a marathon. But it's just so much time. Like, it's so much time right now. Anyway, I'm done with my whining. Ultra marathons are impressive and terrifying. I have friends that are like ultra marathoners, like like absolutely absurd amounts. Like, I have friends who like go to Alaska and then run 50 miles a day for several days in a row. I really don't understand it. Nana says, my joints are tired, but my muscular form looks perfect. That's great. I feel like the damage to my joints is not worth the trade-off for me. Especially because I want to be able to keep doing double jumps on ice skates into my 40s, and I am not going to be able to do that, especially with my arthritis, if I keep punishing them by doing a sport I don't actually like. So if you want to look up a super wild ultra, the Big Dog Backyard Ultra is happening right now. I will look it up. The thing about running for me is, like, I also feel this way about biking. Like, I don't understand following bike races or running races unless you, like, know the person, because I just find it incredibly boring to watch. Like, I have quite a few friends that, like, get together to watch the Tour de France, and I'm like, but why? It's just a bunch of people doing this on their bikes. I love biking. I don't love running, but I do it reluctantly, and I will come support you, my friend. If you decide to run a half marathon or a marathon or something, I will come cheer on you and make you a sign. However, I don't find joy in watching other people run. So, that's how I feel about golf. Okay, so here's the thing about golf. I also don't understand why people play it. Like, I get why biking long distances is fun. But, yeah, I don't know. A friend of mine runs the Arrowhead 135, which is 135 miles in North Minnesota, completely unassisted in the coldest part of winter. Cool. Great for those people. Let's, like... I like that your reasoning for jogging is because spandex looks amazing. That's why I figure skate. We get spandex, but with way more glitter. You also get judged on your sparkles. And lots of other things, unfortunately, because it's a judged sport and very sexist and homophobic, but, you know, and racist. Just casual, normal things for a judged sport. I laughed and Death's face seems to be the emerging sports theme. Yeah, I mean, is it really the emerging sports theme, though? Because the first person who did a marathon died. And yet, now it's just like a thing normal Bob, the accountant, decides to train for and run on just a random Sunday. Ultras are almost never televised. Big Dog has short video clips posted every hour. You really have to follow online on special forums / Twitter. Yeah, I'm sure there's special forums. I will say, like, the big Australia, like, cross Australia race, it really sucked because someone had a spot beacon, which, you know, is like what I also have when I don't have, like, to report to my website and stuff so people can find me if I don't have cell signal. And this was a couple years ago, but we, like, using the spot beacon, had figured out this person had died because their spot beacon hadn't moved in so long, and they had, like, gotten hit by a car. Anyway, it was very terrible. There were a lot of people following it on Twitter. It was just on Twitter. Emily says, I feel like we forget about that marathon thing. I know. We're getting so off track here, but whatever. It's on brand for this live stream. I was at the National Bike Summit a couple years ago, and they had a keynote speaker who came from like the running world. I don't know what her organization was, but she was the first woman to run the Boston Marathon, and she ran it illegally. She like just tagged onto the back because she kept trying to enter and they wouldn't let her run. And this was only in the like 60s. And, she was saying, they thought if women ran, our uteruses would fall out. And, they tried to attack them when they were running the Boston Marathon to keep her from running it. And the whole reason that she was at the National Bike Summit was to make this presentation to all of these bike advocates who were mainly not from the recreational side of things. They're mainly on the planning side of things and the, trying to get people to commute to work and use bikes for their errands. But it's meant to be a mashing of industry and everything. But she was making the argument that bicycle sports are dominated by men right now. And that's still very much true. You see that at everything. And one of the few places I see less domination by men is Portland. And my argument is that because we focus so much on the community aspects of cycling here, and also that we have 8 to 80 facilities. And you also see a closer mode share in Amsterdam, where they've kind of gone for Amsterdam and Copenhagen, where they've gone for what they call the vacuum cleaner model, which is that a bike is just a tool that everyone has. It's not a thing that's being pursued as recreation. But her argument is now the majority of people who run in organized races are women. 60% of organized races are actually entered by women. And it is because they figured out how to market and appeal to women, and they also got over all these barriers. And her argument was how do we get away from that point? How do we get away from biking being this sausage fest, and that every time you go to these large organized bike rides, you actually have moved into, because biking, fun bike rides and large group bike rides are inherently social. It's, I think, one of the best social sports because you can just slow down and talk to a friend, and it's easy to wear costumes, and I can wear a lot more fun, carry and wear a lot more fun things on my bike than I can, running somewhere, and you can go farther, and it connects community. And that's one thing we are good at in Portland, thanks to Pedalpalooza. And it was just such an interesting argument, and also to find out how quickly it changed. It was by the late 90s, majority of organized running, of which women had been banned just, 20 years earlier, had completely changed. Denise said, that's so true about biking in Portland. Well, refer to my talk that I gave at the National Bike Fun that said, what was the title of it? Past padded butts and helmet mirrors, how bike fun is the key to diversifying the cycling community. Anyway, I gave a talk on this a bunch of years ago at the National Bike Summit, and I pissed off a lot of people, and I still stand by it. Actually, I gave a refined version of the talk that's online, because that one actually isn't online. But I gave a version of it at PSU. So if you search bike fun Lillian Carebake Portland State University, you should find it. It was an hour-long talk, and that one was not at a National Bike Summit, so I wasn't on stage trying to make people angry. It was an hour-long talk at a university, so it was a little different. But I remember watching a documentary series about AIDS life cycle where you fundraise thousands and ride your bike from San Francisco to LA over 7 days, and that always seemed rad. I was planning on doing AIDS life cycle this year. I already reached out to I was going to do it with the Cascade AIDS Project, which is the Portland team. This was the year that I was going to go do AIDS life cycle. And I have a bunch of friends that do it down in LA, drag nuns, because I have a friend who's a Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence down there. And I know her from bike culture in Portland. Anyway, RIP, not doing it this year. But maybe another year. I really want to do it because the idea of a large organized group bike ride that is just full of queers and raising money for a good charity sounds awesome. It's also not a super hard ride. It's like, because it's like over 7 days and that distance is very doable. Denise says, there's such a huge difference between bike and bike racing. Most of my time on a bike is in a sport, and I'd started biking a lot sooner if I'd realized that. Yeah, I think that's the Amsterdam model, right? You make it like a vacuum cleaner. It's just a tool to get around. It's not something that people fetishize. It's not something that people do as a sport. It is an effective tool for getting around. And if you make the facilities safe, convenient, and accessible and ubiquitous for everyone, then it becomes, in Amsterdam, it's very easy to ride your giant, super heavy bike with your kids on the back to school in your skirt and heels with no helmet and, never have an interaction with a car because you're entirely on protected bike lanes. And guess what? Makes a huge difference to whether or not it is viewed as a utility. And that's the other thing is people keep being like, my doctor, she was like, oh, how are you doing with keeping up activity? And I was like, well, at first it was really hard because I stopped biking 2 hours a day. And she was like, wait, why aren't you biking 2 hours a day? And I was like, because it was my commute. I don't just ride my bike around for fun. And I do ride my bike for fun, but with people. I'm organizing group rides and stuff. So, and in Portland, we're way more into bike riding for fun and also not for utility that is not racing. We have a lot more I led the Bowie versus Prince ride for years, which is just dressing up as Bowie and Prince and having a dance party all over town on bikes. But, I also led a ride about the history of our water fountains in Portland on bike. And I don't know, there's just lots of more fun things to do. Emily said, women run more if you stop tackling them on the course, it turns out. That's fair, although they made other adjustments as well. They showed a video of the ride when I was doing volunteer training for the LGBT center here, and I fully burst into tears. I know, it's I was very, very excited. I was very excited about, just doing it. It just sounded very fun. Because I used to have to do Cycle Oregon for work, which is 2,000 people. And I wasn't always getting to ride every day because we were providing facilities for the riders. And it's 2,000 people. It's in a different part of rural Oregon, Washington, or Idaho every year. But I am a good 30 or 40 years younger than the average person that does it and way more female. And because of that, they really try to push the social aspect. It's a long ride and there are hard days. They will have 90-mile days. Although it is supported, so it's a little easier. But they really push the social aspect. There's a beer garden at night and everybody's camping, but it's just a very different vibe on the stage and in the beer garden than I'm really into. And also I did it on my bike, which is a gorgeous custom Ahern. I love her dearly. I could talk about my bike till the cows come home. And is meant for doing long distance touring. That is what it was. It was built for me for that. However, it is an upright bike and bright yellow, and nobody on these rides could handle it. They were very offended to be passed by someone wearing a skirt and a crinoline because, yes, I do wear a skirt and a crinoline, but also padded shorts underneath. I have very nice bike shorts that have lace to go under my skirts, but I also had a sound system on my bike and that bike is very good at going up hills. So I would be passing all these dudes on a hill. I will not pass going down because I don't weigh that much. And also I am, very scared because I broke my wrist on a hill and I still haven't really gotten over that fear. Anyway, I would pass them going up hills and they just could not handle it. And they constantly would make the theme song, the Wicked Witch theme song from Wizard of Oz, because and like make Toto jokes and stuff, and I was just so very, very tired of that when it's just hundreds of people making that joke every day for 8 days. Anyway, I was just so excited to come do that ride, which I loved the riding part of it, but with a bunch of queers. I thought it was going to be great. Anyway, I may do, if it's safe to do it next year and things work out, I may do it next year. So look for me fundraising for AIDS at some point next year. Bowie versus Prince is my favorite part of Pedalapalooza. Oh, thank you. Well, we don't have it anymore. 2016 was the last year. They died, and it was the 10th year, so no more. It is a wonderful thing. AIDS life cycle is great. I used to stick my nose up at supported rides. Like, I didn't want to be part of something, because for me, a lot of the biking was about sustainability, and I was like, why have a car haul everybody's stuff? And like, I kind of had this like, that elitism you have in your 20s, where I'd be like, well, I carry all my stuff and it's supported, so I'm obviously cooler. But then once I did supported rides and realized what they're kind of about, I actually feel a lot better. Because imagine if all those people were just driving from campground to campground. Who are two alive celebrities that could replace Bowie and Prince? One year I did a Gaga versus Madonna ride, which I think is like a really excellent mashup. The Gaga versus Madonna was a little unfair at that time because Gaga didn't have a very deep discography and Madonna had such a deep discography. However, we did have a Madonna versus Gaga dance battle at the kickoff for it. But honestly, you could just look at the Pedalapalooza calendar. I started the versus trend, and there are versus everythings now. There's like Star Wars versus Star Trek. There's like Van Halen versus, who else would it be? Grateful Dead. There's versus everything. So, yeah, it's just quite the experience. I personally will no longer lead any dance party rides because I am too old to stay up that late, and Bowie versus Prince ate about a month of my life every year as far as organizing, and it's very stressful. And it got to the point where I had to have insurance and OLCC permits and hire people and get porta potties, and it just took so much. It became event organizing and running a bar for a night. And it was just not, I don't know, it was just frustrating. Nana, what I'm going to say is, conspiracy theories aside, drug addiction affects everyone, and it doesn't matter your discipline or your personal willpower or your socioeconomic class. Addiction affects all sorts of socioeconomic classes, and Prince had been pretty open about the fact that he had struggled with addiction before. So, but, I don't know because I don't know him, so I can't ever be confident about it. Should I finish this Huckleberry on the live stream? This is a lot of donut. These 2 donut live streams, man, are taking a lot out of me. I hope they don't do 8 flavors for November again. I am taking open suggestions for, I'm taking open suggestions right now for what we can build out of Legos during the election night live stream. We were trying to think of some chill activity that we could do for the election night live stream that you could just kind of tune into and that wouldn't be too stressful. And I think we decided that building something out of Legos. We were thinking the White House, but then we were thinking, should we go deeper and build the Kremlin out of Legos or something? Yeah, it's a very small donut tax. "3D puzzles of castles." Is there something that's kind of election themed without being too traumatic? I feel like the White House is almost too traumatic right now. He never licensed Trump Tower, did he? Because that would be hilarious. I build Legos on Creativerse on stream for free. Which Lego set should I get? You are guaranteed more of a Lego expert than I am. I would like to know. I learned how much I did not know about Legos at some point. When like we were Googling and we realized, which delighted me to no end, that there are websites where people rate all of the Lego sets for their value per build hour and how long the average build time is by sets. It's so great. Oh, these are real. You're talking about fictional Legos. Like fictional. I don't know. How much is this fictional versus real life? I'm talking about actually something like in real life. Like I'm going to buy a Lego set and then build it up. So yeah, that sounds like a whole new skill set. I just want to focus on putting Legos up. Fandom exists for everything, including Legos. What delighted me was that, like, of course the crossover of Lego enthusiasts and people that have complicated spreadsheets where they calculate out how many blocks per hour they're able to build and their, like, marginal block per rate that they can do. What that, like, allows them to build. Like, it just seems like, of course, that there are people, those are the same people. Aaron was also pointing out that this person probably makes killer off affiliate links because they just had, filled with all of these Lego sets on their website. So I hope that funds their Lego. They also called it an investment in a Lego set. Statue of Liberty, I think that exists as a Lego. Oh, I think it does. Yeah, that's very interesting. I saw a Lego Beatles album cover at Target yesterday. It's not very election night themed, but it does sound pretty cool. Statue of Liberty is pretty good. I feel like Statue of Liberty more accurately represents my values right now than the White House. So maybe from my own personal feelings, I should do Statue of Liberty. I'm going to buy a kit because I don't know enough about Legos to try to build something without a kit. So for the purposes of broadcast, I am not going to be acquiring Legos because we actually live like really close to a Lego store. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about I think this is a good activity to do that's like chill. You can watch some progress being made. We can kind of talk a little bit while we do it, but nothing like too much. And then I'm trying to make it a very low-key stream. Okay, well, how about everyone tell me how they are doing, what they're excited about this week before we go, and then we will head out. And while you type out what you are excited about doing this week, just one last shout out to the fact I have less than 6 of these left on the website. So these are my Zero Proof Bourbon teas. We also have the Perna Colada. However, it doesn't ship until November because we already ran out of the first set. But they're good. I'm very excited about them. And also no pressure if it's not your thing and up your alley. I'm just trying this out. I'm not currently planning on opening a massive tea empire. I just wanted this to exist and wanted to, like, make it and sell it, so. I made 18 grocery bags for homeless neighbors, and I'm excited to hand them off to my friend tomorrow. Oh, that's awesome! That's great. It does, I will say there's something extremely satisfying about direct mutual aid in a way that, like, as fun as it is to just donate money, it is very nice to feel like you are donating a concrete thing, especially because donating money, unless you're donating it directly to an individual, by the time it gets to the individuals it's helping, it is also paying someone else's salary and may or may not be efficiently used. could make the Titanic. Either it arrives in New York City or it doesn't, you know, depending on the result. I mean, Trump is going to flee the country if he loses, so. Oh, yes. Nana is excited to hear about the U.S. stimulus and if anything happens. Yeah, that was the other, like, very large piece of U.S. economic news this week, which is that they seem to have resumed talks on the stimulus. I'm at the point where I'm going to say I'll believe it when I see it as far as what is going on with that. But if there is an update, if anything does happen next week, we will talk about it on the stream for sure. My mutual aid group, Bikes and Bites Minneapolis, is doing a costumed adorned donation ride next Saturday morning. I'm hoping to deck out my bike in full costume if I have time after work this week. That delights me. I think I'm going to start it next week. I am planning, I guess I'm going to say it publicly now. I am planning on doing 10 days of Halloween where I wear a different Halloween costume every day because I have so many Halloween costumes. And obviously I'm going to be repeating costumes, may or may not be Halloween costumes because I wear costumes more on other days than on Halloween. Anyway, I'm going to like just rotate through all of my costumes because I just need that going up to the election. I feel like it will be fun. That sounds great. Claire is going to go to a volunteer meeting for a mutual aid group. I love how much mutual aid stuff is going on this week. Does the Fed have a logo set? Probably a Lego set. I don't know, but if they do, I want it. We have shredded bills, too, from the Fed that I can put in. I was given by a Federal Reserve employee. For the purposes of having my cat roll around in them. Looking forward to ballet yoga. Nice. That sounds very exciting. Well, next week on the stream, I'll be excited about Lily's costume for Days Parade. Nice. Well, I'm excited that you're excited, and I guess now that I've said it out loud, it's not just an intention in my head, and I have to actually follow through with it. Well, y'all are lovely. Thank you for spending a little bit of your Saturday night with me or your Sunday morning. And it has been a delight to have you all. Please take care of yourself. Stay hydrated. Pet a cat if you have one available. And I will see you same time, same place next week. And some of you might get packages from me this week if you bought tea. Cheers. See you later.